Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Anti-Doping Podcast, brought to you by the Partnership for Clean Competition. I'm your host, Dr. Marie McNeely, and today we are joined by our guest, Kara Goucher. Listeners, Kara is a 3-time NCAA champion, a 2-time Olympian, winner of the silver medal at the 2007 World Championships in the 10,000 meter race, and she's also a podium finisher at the Boston and New York marathons. Currently, Kara is a mom, as well as a successful author, television commentator, and podcaster. And we are so excited to talk with her today about her athletic career and some of the important work that she is doing to advocate for clean and safe sport. So, Kara, welcome to the show today. How are you?
Thank you. I'm excited to be here, and I'm doing great. It's a beautiful, sunny day in Boulder, Colorado, so it's a good day.
Oh, wonderful. Well, we are excited to learn more about you and all of the work that you've been doing and all of your athletic achievements as well. But perhaps we can start at the very beginning here. Can you share how you first discovered your particular passion for running?
I grew up in a household where we had to be in a sport at all times. If you name a sport, I've probably done it. And I was never particularly great at anything, but my grandpa actually introduced me to running when I was 6 years old. He took me to my first race, and I actually fell at the start, and he thought, oh, great, she's going to hate running. But I jumped up and I said, they're getting away from us. And he was pleasantly surprised that I had a competitive streak in me. And then running was just something I did with my grandpa a couple times a year. I'd run a race here or there or do a little jog with him. He was a lifelong runner. And then in middle school, I officially went out for the cross-country team and immediately fell in love with the structure of it, and actually ended up running for the high school that spring as a 7th grader. And that's how it started.
Wonderful. And then I think a lot of people get involved in sports in their early years, and it's a wonderful way to be social in school as well, having these team sports. But you then made the decision to pursue sport at the elite level. Can you talk about what informed that decision and how you got more serious about running?
Always loved sports. I mean, I come from a really athletic family. My sisters are much more athletic than I am, believe it or not. Like, they're very good at soccer and basketball and softball and all the hand-eye coordination stuff that I did not inherit. So I always really loved sports as a huge part of my life growing up. And I really was into the Olympics. I loved it. My whole family, we were like kind of crazy. We'd watch it every summer and every winter. And I really dreamed of going to the Olympics. And I didn't have any sort of idea of what event it would be or anything like that. But I just wanted to participate so badly. And then as I got older and I realized I was a gifted runner, I really started to dream about running in college and had the opportunity to do that. And then it was really in college where I started to learn, oh, you could actually be a professional runner. That's a job. I ran at the University of Colorado, and there was other athletes that had gone on to run professionally. I didn't know that was an option. So I was able to sign a contract and move forward and then just keep pursuing it. So I always wanted to be involved in sports. It was super important to me, but I honestly didn't really realize you could make a living in it until I was in my 20s.
I love that. I think that discovery is an important pivotal moment in your career. And you had some major successes as a collegiate athlete. And then you were later invited to join Nike's Oregon project after graduating. So can you talk a little bit about what this opportunity meant for you and what the sponsorship from Nike meant for you at the time?
Yeah, when I graduated college, I signed with Nike right away. My husband was racing for Fila. So we stayed in Colorado and we were running under our college coach. And then after the 2004 Olympic trials, neither of us made the Olympic team. And we were like, we're young. We don't have kids yet. We're young enough to maybe try with another coach. My husband at that time had switched over to Nike sponsorship as well. So we were meeting with coaches, and then Nike said, hey, we have this team in Oregon. We'd really like you guys to come check it out. We'll fly you out. No commitment, just come see what it's like. So we flew out to Oregon, and really it was a men's team. There were no women. I was going to be the first woman involved. But for us, it was like running professionalized. There was coaches and there was medical staff, and you were going to be getting massages and prehab, and people were going to be teaching you how to do your weights. Just so much, like a comprehensive, full professional program. And basically they said, give us 6 months. If you hate it, you can leave and move back to Colorado. And my husband was really excited. He and I both had been struggling with injuries. So we went, even though it wasn't necessarily the best situation for me, but we went, and in 6 months, I actually got injured again and had to have surgery.
Oh, no.
But his running turned around. He started running great. And so we decided to stay. And then, of course, as time went on, I got healthy and started to run well as well. So that's how Nike invited us to come out and check it out. And it just felt like this incredible opportunity that we couldn't pass up.
Absolutely. And I think this is the dream for so many athletes, to get a sponsorship from a big name like Nike. So what was it like for you when you first stepped on that Nike campus and knew that they were courting you for this program, and then when you ultimately enrolled and started the program?
I had visited the Nike campus a couple of years earlier when I had signed with them. But when we came back to visit in 2004 about the Oregon project, it was like, you're going to live here. You're going to be running on these fields. You're going to be running on this track. This is the Lance Armstrong gym where you're going to work out and have a locker. It was just so grand. We're going to be living amongst legends. The buildings on the Nike campus are named after these legendary athletes. And the head coach, Alberto Salazar, had his own building. And it just felt like, exactly as you said, this is a dream come true. Anybody would just kill to have this opportunity. And we're crazy to turn it down. This is a once in a lifetime opportunity. We have to take it.
Definitely. And you mentioned some of the cutting edge facilities, resources. Can you talk about how these facilities and resources and the coaching that you received impacted your training, maybe before and after the injury?
So they had underwater treadmills. I had never seen that before. They had obviously beautiful gyms and things like that. They had the first Alter G treadmill, which is now commonplace, but the Nike Oregon project actually had the first one where you slip into these shorts and zip yourself into this contraption and it blows up and takes weight off. So if you are a little dinged up and you can't run, you can still run through that. They had this beautiful track literally in the woods. Everything was just incredible and top of the line. They had a house where we were allowed to live, although we chose not to because we were a married couple and we didn't want to live with a bunch of guys. But they had a house that was set at elevation and they ended up putting that into our house. So we would be sitting in our house, but we'd be sitting at 10,000 feet because they would have air pumped in that was
the right oxygen percentage. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it was just like all these things that we had never even heard about. It was incredible. It was just like, I remember my husband and I saying to each other, like, if we can't be successful here, we just can't be successful. Everything you could want is at your fingertips, including the footwear department to make you a special shoe. Like I have a bunion. Oh, we'll make you a special shoe that laces up differently so it doesn't rub on your bunion. I mean, down to the littlest details. So it just felt like if we can't be successful here, then we've just dreamed too big.
Well, I think that is remarkable. And you mentioned that it was sort of touch and go for you. You had an injury relatively early on, but then you recovered and things started going really well. So what was going through your mind, Kara, as you began to start competing on the world stage? For example, the World Cup in 2006, and you went on to the World Championships in 2007. And then, of course, that big dream, the Olympic Games in 2008.
Honestly, it just felt like such a dream come true. I had dreamt about becoming an Olympian. In college, I won 3 national titles and I believed I was good enough. And then I suffered 3 or 4 years of injuries and those dreams kind of had started to die out. So 2005, I ran a personal best for the first time in about 5 years. And then in 2006, yes, I made the World Cup team and got a medal there and then went on to the World Championships in 2007. And it just felt like all of my dreams are coming true. I mean, I was working so hard. My husband and I would just be exhausted at the end of every day. So it's not like it was coming easy, but I just felt we're supposed to be here. Everything is coming true. I won a medal at the World Championships. That blew my mind. I never thought that was possible. And then, of course, culminating with making the Olympic team in 2 events in 2008. So even though it was not a perfect situation, it just felt this is where I have to be. I need these people to be successful.
Definitely. And can you share what it was like for you then going to the Olympic Games in 2008 in Beijing and actually competing?
So this is part's a little sad as I dreamt about the Olympics for so long and making the Olympic team was so joyous. But I think in 2008, there was a lot of hope from my team that I would win a medal. I had won a medal the year before at the World Championships and I walked into that stadium of 80,000 people and that's bigger than my hometown. Mm-hmm. I was just very overwhelmed. And I remember my mom was somewhere in there and my husband and my coach were somewhere in there. And I remember thinking if I could just hear or see one of them, I'll feel grounded. And of course, I couldn't hear them at all.
Sure.
So it was kind of an overwhelming experience. And I ran the 10,000 first, which was the event I was expected to medal in. I finished 10th at the time, but it's been moved up to 8th because of doping positives. And I remember afterwards, my coach was really disappointed and he was just like, you've let everyone down and you quit out there. I still had another event left and it was really hard. It just didn't match what I had had in my mind. I mean, going to the opening ceremony was one of the greatest experiences of my life. I had dreamt of seeing the torch be lit in person. So there was a lot of really great things about it, but the performance side of it, it was not what I had dreamt of at all.
Certainly. And you mentioned, of course, that there was medal reallocations. And I think that's something that we hate to hear about in these Olympic Games because it means people have missed their moment on the podium. But can you talk a little bit about what your experience was like with the anti-doping system throughout your career, whether it was the education components, the testing experience, or seeing these medal reallocations and knowing that some of your competitors were doping.
I didn't have a ton of experience. Like I got drug tested in college and then a little bit when I first started as a pro, but it was very sporadic, once or twice a year. And then once I won a medal at the 2007 World Championships, I started getting tested more than once a month. I would get tested 20, 25 times a year. And I had a really, really good relationship with the doping control officers. I actually liked being tested. I felt like it was building my profile. So I didn't have any problem with that. I never had a missed test. I was able to update all of my stuff. So my experience was honestly quite good. So in 2007, I actually won the bronze medal at the World Championships. And then in 2015, I found out that the woman who finished right in front of me, when they retested our samples, she had tested positive for stanzanol with better testing. And so in 2017, I was flown out to the World Championships to receive my silver medal. And it was like a really surreal experience. I was glad that I was getting the proper medal, but it was literally 10 years after the fact. And I always had felt so lucky to win that bronze medal. I thought, I'm not the best in the world, but I'm a gamer. And when a window opens up or a door opens, I'm going to be there. So there was a lot of mixed emotions of, oh, if I had been second in the world, maybe I would have thought of myself differently. Maybe I would have believed in myself a little bit more. And that has just continued. My results from the 2008 Olympics have changed. My results from the 2012 Olympics have changed. And that's really hard and really frustrating because at the end of the day, I always knew I wasn't the best athlete in the world, but I wanted to know how good I was. And I don't think I'll ever actually have that answer.
Definitely. And you mentioned the 2012 Olympics. I think there was a lot of drama surrounding racing in general in the 2012 Olympics. Can you talk about that experience and maybe how it was different from your Olympic game experience in 2008, the first time that you went?
In 2012, I was a mom and it was my second time around. I knew what to expect. It wasn't so overwhelming. I also switched events. I ran the 5,000 and then 10,000 in Beijing, and in London, I was running the marathon. But as I was training with Shalane Flanagan at the time, and we really had thought and believed that we could be in the top 5, and we led for more than half of the race, and then it started to pick up. And I do remember we were both a little bit like, what's happening? These women that we don't know are pulling away from us like this isn't what we imagined. I will say mentally, I was in a much better place, kept my head in the game as long as possible. Afterwards, of course, I was frustrated because I had dreamt of a top 5 finish, but I knew that I had done everything right and the chips had just fell where they did. But there was definitely some question from both Shalane and I of like, what just happened? And a lot of women that beat us that we never heard of again. So it was just always interesting. There are athletes that have not so great reputations that you know you're going to have to race, but then there's also athletes that come out of the woodwork. And to be fair, I would have been one of those athletes in 2007. So you just never know. But you just prepare the best you can and you look at the history of the event and you say, I'm ready to do this and that will hopefully put me in this position. And it just didn't on that day.
And I think in your career, you've had these amazing highs and some devastating lows. We want to make sure we cover the full spectrum of your experiences in our interview today. We talked about some of the great things about this Nike Oregon Project program that you were in and some of the great opportunities that you had to train in these high-tech, cutting-edge, world-class facilities. But I think there were some problems, and I want to make sure we talk about those as well. So can you share, Kara, when did you begin to realize that there were issues with this program, and particularly with your coach, Alberto Salazar?
It was honestly a slow burn. And I think when I look back, there was red flags right away. But at the time, I didn't recognize them as that. And my husband and I have just felt so lucky to be a part of the team. So we just didn't really question things. There were some things with our coach skirting NCAA rules. We had a teammate who was still in the NCAA and he was like, those rules are stupid and they don't really matter. And that made us, especially my husband, uncomfortable, but we kind of just ignored it. He asked us to lie if investigators talked to us, which we both felt very uncomfortable about, but we never did get asked any questions by investigators. But there were just little things along the way, like we would go up to training camp and we would room with our coach and another athlete. And our coach would say, hey, you're going to open the fridge. You're going to see a bunch of syringes filled with liquid. Don't worry about it. It's just allergy shots. And I just bought that. And now that I get allergy shots, or I have been getting allergy shots for the last 8 years, I'm like, that's not how it works. You have to go to the doctor and they hold the vial and they're not pre-filled. But I just didn't really question anything. And then my coach also had testosterone gel out in the open in our condo.
Oh, wow.
He said it was for his heart. He had a massive heart attack in 2007 before the World Championships. So looking back, it was obvious that there was something going on, but we just kind of chose to ignore it, I guess, and bought his story. And it wasn't until 2011 when I was returning from having my son, and definitely the tenor of the team had changed. These expectations where before it was like, hey, we're going to be the most prepared team in the world. And if a door opens, we're going to seize the opportunity. But now it was, we have to come home with X amount of medals from the London Olympics. It just had really changed. And that was the first time that my coach actually asked me to take something. He asked me to take Cytomel, which was a thyroid medication, which I did not have a prescription for, to lose weight after having my son. And that really put me in an uncomfortable position because I know that Cytomel could be performance enhancing as well. That was the big dagger. And then I started to get really nervous about things I was seeing around the team and the way people were talking and the way people were talking about getting jabs and things like that. And then when I looked back, it was like, wow, maybe this has been building for a while. But for so long, I just blindly followed because I thought it's kind of embarrassing. But as an elite athlete, you just have these dreams and they're so hard to achieve. And I'm like, if I let it enter my mind that something's wrong here, everything I've worked for is going to fall apart and it's going to be gone. And everything I've dreamt of is going to be gone. And so it's easier to just believe him and buy all of his explanations.
Definitely. And I think for athletes as well, there's just that inherent trust in that relationship between a coach and an athlete. So you just think that they've got your best interest in mind. You're working together as a team to achieve these goals together. So how did that impact then how you were starting to think about your coach and how those interactions were going between the two of you?
It just started to get really uncomfortable. Like, for instance, I'd have blood work done and I wouldn't see it. It would go to a doctor and my coach would tell me if it was good or not. I wasn't even getting my own medical information. There are even times where I was injured and forced to run on injuries. And there was just things that started to make me so uncomfortable. And a couple of times I brought up to my coach, I don't understand what I'm seeing in practice. I used to do the same workouts as the men, and now they're working out twice in one day, and I'm just doing one workout, or it takes them one day to recover. It takes me two. And my coach would be like, well, you had a baby and it's just different. And we just started to have this strain kind of develop between us. And I remember specifically being at the Prefontaine Classic in 2011 and watching it. And my husband and son weren't there. And I called my husband and I said, I don't believe what I'm witnessing. And my husband said, do you think they're cheating? And I was shocked at how quickly I just said yes. I was terrified. I have a young child. I have a huge Nike contract. I'm the provider for my family. Where do I go? What do I do? I have this horrible, horrible realization that I believe the people closest to me and my career are cheating or crossing the line. What do I do with that? That was probably in May or June. And then I did not leave the team until August. I finally got the strength to leave in August. It sounds like, oh, you think they're cheating, you just leave. But this is your family. I spent more time with my teammates and my coach than anyone else in my life, except for my husband. You become really, really close with these people and just friends and family that you care about. You accept their faults and you kind of excuse them away. So it wasn't that easy to live. It was actually horrible. It was really, really hard. Again, it's a little bit embarrassing looking back because it's like, well, why didn't I just leave? And there were other things that had happened with my coach being inappropriate sexually. And there were so many reasons to leave, but I think you're just embedded in it so much and there's so much trust and you're all working towards this huge goal that you feel like no one else can understand. So yeah, it took a really long time for me to be like, this is not right. And even when I realized it wasn't right, it still took me a long time to leave.
I think you hit the nail on the head there when you mentioned you've sort of invested so much at that point. And you've kind of got this plan, right? The roadmap is right there in front of you and it looks like it's all in reach. And so, you know, if you walk away, you're going to have to start over somewhere else, which seems quite difficult.
Yeah. And also, would I lose my contract? My coach has a building on the Nike campus. Are they going to believe me or are they going to believe him? So yeah, the thought of starting over was so overwhelming. And then also, am I going to lose my livelihood was also very overwhelming.
Absolutely. And you mentioned you had been away, you gave birth to a son, you created a whole additional person at that point, and then you were coming back to your career. And I think this is a difficult balance. You were trying to keep your athletic career going while also dealing with a wide variety of different things, kind of just getting your body back in shape, dealing with injury, abuse, and just this environment that really wasn't conducive to clean and safe sport. So can you talk a little bit about what it was like for you ending up in this tangled web where you knew something wasn't right, but you didn't know what to do? How did you work through that?
It was so hard. I would leave my beautiful son and go to practice and then be in chaos. And a lot of uncomfortable things. Like my coach would make comments about my breast size because I was nursing. I mean, sort of chaotic environment. And then I'd be running so hard. And at the time, I actually wasn't getting paid. I had been suspended for having a baby. So I wasn't actually even getting paid. And there was so much pressure to return to competition because then I would get paid again. So I would be at practice and then my coaches would be like, you used to be fun. You used to hang out after practice. But I was like, well, I have to go home and nurse my son.
Right.
I can't hang out here and go grab a sandwich. Like I have to go home. And so it was two worlds. And my husband at that point had really fallen out with my coach, Alberto Salazar, but he was also doing this dance of supporting me, but also I don't want to be a part of that. So it was honestly one of the worst times of my life. And it should have been one of the most joyous times. But I felt like I was walking this tightrope of appeasing Alberto and my teammates when I was around them and then being who I really wanted to be at home. But I felt I can't leave them. They made me who I am. They believed in me and got me out of my injury cycle. And so I had a lot of thoughts of I'm nothing without them. I won't be successful without them. And so even though I'm super uncomfortable with the way I'm being treated, with the way I'm being talked about, with things I'm seeing, what's my other option? It's like going off on my own where I'm nobody. Like I felt so much like there is no Kara without Alberto. And so it was really, really hard. And it was really hard on my marriage too.
Definitely. So can you share, were there particular connections or resources or anything that you found that helped you get through this difficult time?
Oh, no, not really. There was no one for me to talk to, at Nike. Again, I felt like if I said to anyone at Nike, I think they might be cheating or Alberto is making me uncomfortable with his comments, I'm disposable. He's not. He's so important to the brand, which they proved later when we had all the hearings and they paid for his hearings and they paid for his legal counsel. And all of my friends were Nike employees. There's nowhere for me to go. And so honestly, I just was living in this double world for so long until finally on the way home from the World Championships that August, I just looked at my husband and I said, I can't do this anymore. I have to leave the team. And he was like, oh my God, I was just about to tell you, you have to leave the team. That was the first time I just openly cried. And I was like, I have been so stressed. And he knew I had been stressed because he knew that I thought they were cheating and all this other stuff. But that was the first time I really just let my guard down. And he was like, we will figure it out. You are more than just Alberto's athlete. Like, we will figure this out and you'll get to keep running. But until then, I really was keeping it all in by myself.
And can you share what maybe was the thing that tipped the scale on the way back? August 2011, what made you throw in the towel and say, I've had enough?
This is hard to say, but we had a newborn son. So my son was only 11 months old at the time. We weren't going to bring him all the way over to South Korea. And I was also injured. I had a stress fracture in my femur. And my husband was just going to fly in for 48 hours to support me and then fly back. So I flew over earlier than that, obviously, to get adjusted to the time. And I flew over alone with my coach. And on the flight over, he got drunk and made a pass at me. And I went into the bathroom and I started crying. I'm in the middle of the air on a flight to Daegu.
Literally trapped.
Yeah, I'm literally trapped. This person that I considered a father figure, to be quite frank, does not respect me the way that I have respected him. And what's kind of sad for me to think about is the doping stuff wasn't enough. I had to feel almost degraded before I said, this is it. But I made the decision in that bathroom. I was like, I'm going to survive this World Championships and then I'm gone. And that's exactly what I did.
Definitely. So what was that process like then, stepping away from the Nike Oregon project? Did they try to make you stay, or how did those conversations go?
It was so hard. I started with asking Alberto to meet with me because I wanted to talk to him in person. He had been such an important part of my life. And so I didn't want to email him or anything like that. So I asked him to meet me. And then we went to meet and he brought the team sports psychologist. My husband had offered to go with me. And I said, no, this is between Alberto and I. And he deserves to hear all of this from me. And then I got there and the sports psychologist is there and I tell them that I want to leave. And I had a lot of fear. I couldn't say, I think you guys are cheating and you hit on me and you made me uncomfortable. Right. But he just was like, I'm no longer happy. I feel like the program has shifted. I no longer fit in here. And I was kind of falling on my sword. I was like, I'm so grateful for everything, but it's time for me to move on. And they were telling me, don't cut off your nose to spite your face. The Olympic trials are just a few short months away. You don't want to get yourself in a situation where you don't make the Olympic team. But I just stayed firm and I cried and I was like, it's done. And they started to bring up my husband. Is this what Adam wants or is this what you want? And I was like, this is what I want. So I left that meeting very clear, but it wasn't over then. I got emails from my coach and from the sports psychologist telling me to reconsider after that. My coach called me and said, don't you love me? We've built this life together, and not in an appropriate way, but we're in each other's lives. I believe in you. So it was really hard. But at the end of the day, I stayed firm the whole time. Even though I cried a lot, I stayed firm of, no, this is not a healthy place for me to be anymore. But it took a while. It wasn't like I just met with them that one day and it was over. It was like a breakup.
Right. Well, it sounds like this was a really difficult time for you. And I think so difficult because there weren't a lot of other people that you could talk to, but you ultimately did end up serving as an informant or whistleblower to bring some of these potential doping issues to light. So can you talk about what that process was like and maybe how it started?
I think as soon as I left that team, I started to talk to other coaches, and I was really horrified that a lot of athletes didn't want to train with me because they believed I had been doping. It was a huge slap in the face and a huge reality check. So I finally was able to settle on a team with Shalane Flanagan at the end of 2011. And it just started to eat at me. I'd see my old teammates and I'd see their success, and I would see them keeping other people off of teams. And it really started to make me feel like I was part of the problem, not part of the solution. And I remember in 2013, I was in Colorado Springs training for the Boston Marathon. And that was when Lance Armstrong sat down with Oprah and talked about that he kind of admitted that he doped, although he didn't really get into any details. He didn't take full responsibility. But I remember afterwards, the CEO of USADA was interviewed on a different channel, Travis Tygart. And he talked about how he had received death threats and how he pursued this all the way, even in the face of people telling him not to. And I remember I just looked at my husband and I said, I would talk to him. This guy gets it, because I was fearful. Like I would lose my job. I would lose everything if Nike knew why I had left.
Right.
Or I'd be blacklisted from races or just whatever. And so my husband was like, really? And I said, yeah. And so he got it done. He called someone who knew someone. And I want to say within 3 days, I was in their offices with my husband talking to them for the first time.
Oh, wow.
That meeting was horrible. It was me and Travis Tygart, a couple lawyers, my husband. I cried the whole time. I felt like I was betraying my former teammates and my coach. I felt like I was stabbing them in the back. But also what I learned in that meeting was I told them everything I knew, everything I witnessed, everything that had made me uncomfortable. And then I thought I was done. And they're like, do you want to take a quick break? Because we have questions. And then it became very apparent that there was already an investigation happening, which shocked me. That was in February of 2013. And then it was sort of always there for years. They'd call me, they'd get some information, they'd try to talk to other witnesses. And he wasn't actually charged until 2018, I believe, maybe even 2019. So it was a very long time with this sort of hanging over my head.
Absolutely. And I think not only just hanging over your head, but knowing that it was continuing, I feel like is part of what makes this such a stressful situation.
Yeah, there were times where I'd say to my husband, Adam, I'd be like, I wish I would have just waited till I was done racing. And also, just to be clear, my husband and I went public in 2015. ProPublica and the BBC were going to do a piece on Alberto Salazar. And I wanted no part of it. I don't want to be a part of that. I'm still racing. I'm still trying to make another Olympic team. But my husband had decided to take part in it. And I was very upset with him because I was like, this is going to bring so much attention. Everyone's going to question everything I did. So they came out to Colorado. We were living in Colorado at the time. And they interviewed my husband. And then on the day before they flew out, they met with me. And I just remember thinking, I wish I was as brave as Adam. I wish I was brave enough to tell my side of the story. And they left. And I'm a big person who prays. And then I prayed that night. And the next day I said, I'll talk to them. And so they probably were like, oh my God. So they had to get back on a plane and come back over to Colorado from the UK. But they did. They all came back and we sat down and I just told what I saw. And I felt like this is the moment. I'm tired of carrying other people's secrets. I'm tired of this holding me back as a human, as an athlete, as a mom. Why am I burdening this? I'm not the one who made bad choices. And so it was really scary. And that definitely blew up my life. I mean, there was a ton of attention and kind of made it nonstop. And it made it obviously extremely uncomfortable when I was at races where my coach and teammates were old coach and teammates. But it was the right thing to do.
Absolutely. And I think this is so important to get these stories out there because I think there are probably a lot of people in situations where they're not sure if they could speak up because it is the same sort of thing where it will make the dynamics of the team uncomfortable. It may compromise their career. There's so much at stake. But I think it's really important to, again, ensure that there's a fair playing field out there for people who are doing their best without doping, but also just so important for the health and safety of other athletes as well. So can you talk about maybe some of the other ways that you've worked to ensure that current and future athletes don't have to go through this same heartbreaking situation that you did?
I took a lot of abuse during that time. I had death threats. people calling me a liar, and not just like old teammates, but race directors saying I wasn't welcome there. And it was hard, but I survived it. And then I went on to testify against him at a hearing. And then again, when they appealed it to the Court of Arbitration of Sport. But I think it was important to me to have people see you could survive it and that it didn't cost me my entire career. I'm still in the running space. I think there's so much fear that if you come forward, everything you do will be doubted and you'll be kicked out and spit out of the industry. And of course, I had fear of that. I know that I haven't done anything wrong, but I also am saying my teammates have. So of course, there's going to be people who think I'm lying. But I said this earlier, what really drove me was at the end of the day, I felt like I was still a part of the problem. I felt that by staying silent, I was allowing this stuff to continue. And I felt like that was on my conscience. I could do something to stop it. And by protecting my peace, I'm choosing to be complicit in a sense. So it was really, really hard. But since then, I've talked about it openly, testified, I've spoken a lot. I've talked to other athletes. And I've really just tried to show them that you can survive this. And one of the things that happened through this whole experience was eventually other people did come forward. And maybe you have to stand alone for a little while, but eventually the truth comes to light. And I've continued that work. I had a podcast called the Clean Sport Collective podcast for a few years where I interviewed elite athletes about their decisions not to dope and how they were raised and what is it about them that makes them feel so passionately about it. I serve on the board at USADA now, and my position is to deal directly with athletes and athlete concerns. So I'm not this big hero or anything, but I care deeply about it. And I really want athletes to have a level playing field, and it matters to me so deeply. So I just try to stay connected and still help trying to keep fighting for other athletes.
Absolutely. And I appreciate that you're able to discuss this so candidly and put your whole story out there. And I know that's not easy to have it all in the public space here. And you've been particularly really open and candid about your experiences in the book that you published, The Longest Race. So can you talk about, Kara, why you decided to put out this book, even though you probably knew that there was going to be a lot of backlash?
There were times where I was like, why am I doing this? Why am I exposing myself even further? But I think there were so many people that would talk about me, and well-known people, best-selling authors and people that are very respected in society that had never met me and would say, well, she's crazy or she's emotional or she's a liar. My coach had written a book and had just erased me from his entire experience. And I was so tired of people talking about me as if they had any clue what I had been through. And I started to talk to a good friend and my husband about it. Like, it would feel so good to write a book because would never have to justify myself again. I could just say, if you actually care, you'll read the book. So that turned into me. I'm not a writer. So reaching out to different co-authors and who would be passionate about it. And that's where myself and Mary Pallon met. And then we shopped the book and sold it to Simon & Schuster. And then it was a 4-year project. And while we were writing it, I was going through the American Arbitration Association. So the first round of the charges against Salazar through USADA, and then the CAS hearing, the Court of Arbitration of Sport, where he appealed it. So there was a lot going on while we were writing it too. But I just wanted people to see that they never stole my love of running. There was a lot of bad things that happened and a lot of stress. But at the end of the day, I still love running. I can sleep at night. I remained with my ethics intact. And it was important for me to tell that to other people that you can get through this too. And on the eve of the book's release, I had like a panic attack. I was like, why am I doing this? But the morning that it came out, I went for a run and I felt so calm. And I have felt so calm ever since. I have never regretted writing it. It went through a legal process. I haven't been sued. I haven't even been threatened to be sued because everything in there was backed up by emails or text threads or whatever. And I just felt free. I told my story. I got to speak it. No one interrupted me. No one spoke for me. And I feel free from it. And I don't feel like I carry around other people's shame anymore.
Absolutely. And I know there was a lot of positive feedback as well. So can you share some of the stories or maybe people who reached out to you who were maybe thanking you for writing this book and putting your story out there?
There was so much positive feedback to the point where it became a little bit overwhelming at first, because I think a lot of the things that I've lived through are really relatable to people no matter what their thing in life is. They're not necessarily all elite athletes or athletes even, but just being in a situation where they know something unethical is going on and having to stand up for it, or embarrassingly turning their cheek to it and then regretting it later. So there were so many people reaching out, thanking me, saying they saw themselves in me. a lot of people sharing a lot of their own trauma, which to be honest, did get very overwhelming. I kind of had to take a break from some of the messages and some of the letters that came in.
Sure.
But I never looked for any negative feedback. I know there was a lot of articles written and a lot of discussion and a lot of podcasts about the book, but I chose not to listen or read any of that because it wasn't about that. I wasn't trying to be liked, wasn't trying to have people like me or believe me. For me, it was about putting out my truth, and the people that want to embrace it can embrace it. So I really ignored anything negative and just embraced the positive. And I get an email at least once a week from people who have found the book still 3 years later. So it's been crazy and it's been amazing. And I'm proud that I did it. And I feel like the goal was to tell my story without anyone interrupting me and hoping that at least one person survives because of it. And I feel like that was accomplished.
I think that's wonderful. And I think incorporating the athlete perspective in everything that we do in sport, I think is incredibly important. So can you share, Kara, why you think it's so important for countries and sport organizations to have these very strong athlete-centric anti-doping programs, and also just to continue to invest in anti-doping science through organizations like the PCC to ensure that athletes have the best experience?
Yeah, I mean, the PCC is so important because they do so much research and bring so many of the experts in the world together at their conferences. But I just think, what is the point? I mean, the point for me, I could never stand on top of a podium and know I had taken a shortcut. Told you earlier, I knew I wasn't the best in the world. I have no disillusions. I grew up in Duluth, Minnesota, and I ate Spam, and I never heard of organic until I was in college. I wasn't like bred to be this amazing athlete, but I had this curiosity of how far can I take it? And I never was pressured to do anything wrong until 2011. And I was so lucky to have a high school coach that thought I was great and a college coach that really believed in me. And everyone framed it as, this is such an exciting journey. Let's see how far we can take it. And no one ever was like, you're going to have to do this, you're going to have to do that. And I feel like that is not the experience for everybody else. I remember sitting down with Tyler Hamilton, a cyclist, and he talked about being over in Europe all alone and being pressured to do these drugs. And then eventually he did. He became a person who doped. And I just feel like that's so sad. And I want people to know that you can do it the right way and hold your head high. And maybe you're not going to win, and maybe you will, but maybe you won't, but you can still make a career out of it. And you can still do something you're really proud of. And I just think the message of just let them dope, let them do whatever is so sad. I think about my son and my nieces and my nephews all the time when I hear that excuse of like, just let everyone dope and whatever happens, happens. How sad is that? And how dangerous is that? And I grew up loving sport and being in awe of athletes. And I remember the devastation of learning that Lance Armstrong doped. That hit me hard. I was a big Lance Armstrong fan. I was a big Marion Jones fan. So these things had a big impact on me. These are two of my biggest heroes that I ever had as an athlete. And it's just so sad. You start to like question like, well, what is real and what's the point? And it's so important that we keep it clean, and everyone should care. They should care that what we're seeing is real. Otherwise, what's the point? There's no point of having world championships and Olympic games and competition if people are going to cheat. There's just no point.
Absolutely. I think this idea of seeing how far the journey can take you, seeing how far humans can push the envelope with our own innate physical abilities, I think is the excitement in sport, right?
Oh, absolutely. That's the fun of it. You think of these moments where you saw people break barriers. Of course, as a distance runner, I think of Roger Bannister breaking 4 minutes for the mile for the first time, or I remember watching the women run the 10,000 at the Olympics for the first time and just seeing these things that you're just in awe of. And that's the magic. It's not this enhanced games coming. I can't tell you how much I don't care. I want to see clean athletes pushing the limits and seeing what they're capable of. And most of the time, you don't get what you hope for and you don't get as fast as you want because there are limitations, and that's okay. But the beauty is in trying and being vulnerable and going out there and giving it a shot. So yeah, I love the beauty of sport and I just want to protect it.
Absolutely. And maybe could you comment as well specifically on the value of anti-doping science in this whole sphere of anti-doping in sport?
Without the science, it's never going to be fair or level. The cheaters are always a step ahead. For instance, my own situation, I won the bronze medal in 2007. They drug tested us there. Everybody passed. 8 years later, they retested our samples, and second place had stanzanol in her system, which she had 8 years earlier. But with better testing, thanks to science, she got caught. None of this stuff happens without the science. The testing is so important. There's no other way to really catch anybody. And we have to continue because it's always evolving. So people switch to different types of drugs and different formulations of drugs. And so we're always kind of playing catch up a little bit. And if we turn our back on the science, it's over. The cheating will win.
Well said, Kara. And I appreciate you sharing your insights and perspectives with us today. If our listeners are curious and they want to learn more about you, more about your story, what is the best way for them to get more information?
Well, they should definitely read my book, The Longest Race, because that pretty much tells you everything. But I'm very active on Instagram at Kara Goucher, and I co-host a podcast called Nobody Asked Us with the 2018 Boston Marathon champion, Des Linden, and we talk about all sorts of things, including doping in sport.
I love it. Well, listeners, definitely take some time to check out this podcast. Make sure you get a copy of the book, The Longest Race. And Kara, it's been such a pleasure to chat with you today. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, it's been wonderful to have you here, listeners. Always great to have you here with us as well. If you have a moment, please rate our podcast and leave a review and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. And listeners, please note that the Anti-Doping Podcast features a wide variety of clean sport experts, and episodes may include statements and or viewpoints that do not necessarily reflect the views or values of the PCC. Thank you, and we look forward to seeing you on the next episode of the Anti-Doping Podcast.